Wangui, welcome to the Space Plus podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How are you doing? You're almost graduating. How do you feel?
I feel really excited and very anxious at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to go into like a new phase of my life, to go into a new environment, but I'm also anxious because the new environment is not as defined as like the old environment, which is like all the way. I've been in school all through my life. Apart from when I was 0 to 3, I've been in school, so I know how to survive through the life phase that is school. But now, for the first time, I'm going to a life phase that is not school.
Yeah.
So I don't know how exactly what I've learned is gonna adapt in that environment. So that's what makes me anxious. Yeah.
Wow, it's actually very interesting because in school like we usually have, a structure to follow, and I love the structure that school gives me. So I don't know, do you like the structure more than the, uncertainty that is present, or do you like the uncertainty outside?
That is a great question. I've realized that throughout school, from like elementary to high school, there's less and less structure that you're given. Like in elementary, it was like, you do this, was it 5 subjects? Hey, you do these 5 subjects, you have to do these 5 subjects, like no questions. It's scheduled all the morning till when you go home, and then that's it. For high school, it's like, you start with these 11 subjects or 12 subjects, and then afterwards you decide. And then your Saturdays, Sundays are not as defined, your weekdays, nights are not as defined. And then now in college, it's like, wait, you have to decide what you're gonna study. Wait, you have to decide your courses, especially in the US. And then you have to decide like the free time in between your classes, what you're going to be doing. And then now during, like afterwards, it's like, I decide now what career I'm gonna go into. Like, yes, my day might be defined, but at the same time, it's like I'm just given tasks, and then afterwards I have to fulfill them. So do I really like this? I like the structure. Sometimes I find myself missing high school, like having no distractions.
Which high school are you in?
I was in Pioneer Girls. Yeah, having no distractions. Just, you're supposed to study. Like, it was very clear what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah. But at the same time, having less structure allows you to explore yourself more.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of vibe with that. I don't know. You said that you're anxious, like, because now you're going to finish school. Is there a sense of like, excitement? Because, like, before we started recording, you talked about how, like, you're ready. You're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm ready to go because I don't think I'm growing in this environment anymore. Like, I think I've grown to the max I can grow. And I think now the ultimate test for me to grow more is in the real world. Yeah.
Okay, now when you look at it, I wish I had a photo of like you getting into like freshman year. Yeah. I didn't do my research enough. I didn't stalk you enough.
Do I have photos?
That would be nice.
Let me see. Let me show you a photo of me maybe 1 month before I joined.
My god!
This is like September. Okay, posted it in September, but the photos were taken early August.
Okay, you haven't really changed.
Yeah?
Yeah, no.
You don't think so?
No.
I think my face is fatter. I think my cheeks are like more full.
Okay, yeah. But like for me,
like,
right now, if I see my picture, like even like last year, I'm like I've
You're
changed physically.
I've
changed, but I feel like for you. So I'm wondering if you look at your picture, that picture, and you look at yourself right now. Okay, you can't see yourself right. You can't see yourself in the camera.
I can see myself in the camera.
Yeah. So like if you look at yourself right now, and you look at that picture of this, version of Wangui, like how can you like say,
Wow. Okay, I can say like the audaciousness that she had is still there. Ooh. Like, I think I'm still a go-getter. I'm still like a high achiever. I'm still very competitive, and I try to do that. I think I'm more mature, like socially. Like, I think I've gotten to understand social cues and social especially in the US. So I've learned that. I don't think she was as aware. I think she was just doing whatever she wanted. What else? I think she has more. I think now I look at her. she was very hopeful for the world. I'm less hopeful for the world right now. I think that was like one of the things that have decreased, is like more hopeful. Now I'm less hopeful for the world. What else? Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I feel like in terms of the element of hope, you know, it usually goes down. The more you grow up, the optimism, I guess, it goes down. And I don't know, do you still try to retain that, optimism that you had as a kid, or do you feel like, okay, now I'm growing up, I'm like learning more things, and maybe, because for me, for example, as a kid, I used to think probably like I would eradicate poverty, then right now I'm realizing I can eradicate poverty, but I'll not like eradicate poverty in its entirety, and I can't do it by myself. I have to like have like this whole policy aspect involved, because like I can't just like show up like Batman and like eradicate poverty. So I've realized right now that there's a system that I should follow, and I can't change the whole world, you know, and that maybe is, a reflection of growing up. You learn more and realize, oh wait, maybe you can change the world. So for you, I don't know, first of all, what insight have you gotten, because now you've said that she's more hopeful more than you are right now, and what are you doing to try to reconfigure that and still be the best version of yourself, as you said, like you're still a go-getter.
Like I think as I said, like she was more hopeful for the world. I think I have become, or I am currently the same level of hopeful of myself as I was, but the world in general has decreased. So like, what does that mean?
Wow.
Like for the self, I still believe that I can achieve great things. I still believe that like I had passion for women empowerment, I had passion for like Africa, and I still have that. And like I have been trying to I've been doing actions to try to address that. But now like hope for the world is that I realize the world is very systemized. And as you said, like you have to really obey some parts of the system for you to eradicate it. Like the system of poverty, you still kind of have to overcome poverty for you to help poor people. How exactly do you overcome poverty? It is almost always by abiding through the system. And that is what I mean, there's less hope for the world, because I feel like the systems itself is designed to steal as much autonomy from people, or rob or takes away. So for example, I can say, this is a conversation that I had with my friends, which is like, you come into the US, you think you can major in anything, you think you can study anything, and then you get in and you kind of realize, as an international student in my condition, I can't really major in anything.
Do the classics.
Exactly.
Classics.
You can do the classics.
You can't do the classics.
You can do art history, but only as a minor. It's like you kind of realize that actually there's this level, there's this part of the silent system that you have to obey. And then afterwards you're like, okay, then I want to look for a job. There are very few jobs that are willing to hire internationals. So that's another thing, which is like, oh, that's another part of the system that you have to obey. And then afterwards, there are like silent cues you kind of realize, especially in this elite environment, that you have to abide by, that you have to speak like, you have to think like. And not all of them are bad, but at the same time, it's all doing the same thing, which is either good or bad. It's stealing or it's robbing you of some form of autonomy, because you don't really have a choice. So did I answer your question? Am I making sense?
No, you are. Okay, now let's dive into what your definition of quality education is. Wangui, what is your definition of quality education?
I was really thinking about this question. And as someone who has experienced 2 education systems, I think the best way for me to answer this is through my experience. So let me start with the US, because that's where I am right now. One thing I love about the United States is it has taught me critical thinking. It has taught me not to just accept what is said. Like I have to really evaluate. So for example, a politician, the vice president of the United States, said that,
J.D. Vance.
He said, we want to have more kids in the United States. So if I think about the high school version of me, like more babies, I'd be like, more babies. But now I'm thinking, what babies? Are they saying, is he saying he wants more black babies? Is he saying he wants more Indian babies in America, or is he saying he wants more white babies in America? And you know, like such a level of critical thinking is something the United States teaches you, that you learn how to decipher the truth in systems systems and sentences and statements that seem true. You know, for example, he's not lying. He wants more babies in the United States of America, but he has not specified what babies. He's not lying, but he is talking about very specific kind of babies. That's the kind of thought process that America has taught me. Number 2 is that it has taught me to be more mindful and cautious about the work that I put out. So the grading system here is you cannot renew your GPA. Like your GPA stays with you from like the first exam you do your freshman year to the last exam.
Do you feel like that's a good thing?
It is a double-edged sword.
Yeah, you know, like remember in Kenya we were complaining how like KCSE it's only one exam that determines your life. Yeah. Then you come here, get the GPA, and you're like, KCSE was
it was good, you know.
You know, maybe that one exam was nice.
Yeah, like
so like. What do you think, honestly? Like,
yeah,
do you need like one exam like KCSE that determines your whole life and it's super stressful? Or is it like the GPA system that's pressure off?
That's a good question. Me, if you ask me, I take the KCSE.
No, honestly,
me, I take the KCSE.
Don't take me back. Let me struggle with the GPA.
Maybe I take the KCSE.
But that is so true.
Why do I say that? It's like looking like, you know, you might be coming in like you struggle your freshman year, you know, you're doing your best. Like for example, think about the students who come from like non-English speaking countries and they're coming here to a purely English like speaking system. Like yes, they can know English, but what they taught in English, you know.
Yeah.
So like them adjusting, like there is no reflection of that. Like there's no way you can get a GPA booster just because you're learning to be taught in a new language, you know. So like such a thing is what I feel like it creates silent inequalities within the United States.
Yeah.
That like just because you have a like someone has a 4.0 and another one has like a 3.4, like there's silent things that are going on beyond their GPA, beyond hard work, that it's really hard to standardize.
Okay, true. And the factor of AP classes. Americans had AP classes. So you meet someone in Principles of Econ. Principles of Econ is not an easy class, you know. And this is my first time taking like Econ. I took like business studies in like Form 1. I dropped it. I hated business studies because like I got an 83% in the first exam. You know, the first like Form 1 exam where everyone gets a 95, 99, 100. I got an 83%, and that's where my loathing for business studies started, and I dropped it immediately like in Form 2. When I get here, I take Principles of Econ. And I realized like some people took AP Econ in high school.
They're just revising.
They're just chilling, you know. And it's easier for them to like grasp the content and have to like work twice as hard to like just get to the content. And the workload is a lot because like in a week we can do like 2 chapters. And the chapters are so long. There's like, it's very voluminous. So in terms of like the GPA system, true, it has like that element of inequality.
And it's really wild because it's even, for example, there's Latin honors that happen across different schools. Columbia is one of them. You'll find that like it's an honor. There's summa cum laude, there's magna something. You find that the GPA levels or the cutoffs that they give for different students, for different universities is different. So for example, for something like UPenn is like 3.4, 3.5, but for Columbia it's like 3.9. It is easier to get a 3.9 if you're in some majors than others.
Yeah.
So in such a system, the GPA doesn't necessarily standardize as to like the difficulty of the major. Yeah. For example, someone doing like astrophysics, applied math, like is gonna have a heavier workload than I'm not saying like one is harder than the other, but they're gonna have a hard like heavier workload, more competition, and less attention with their professors compared to someone doing art history where most of the classes are smaller, where it's essay based, it's based on your ideas. The other one is like studying 24 hours.
You know.
Yeah.
Let me say my ideas. I want to give my thoughts. I love those classes.
I love those classes as well, but I've also come to appreciate the other classes. But that's
okay.
So that is the pros and the cons of the US system. Oh, the pros is that, and we're talking about the GPA system. The con of the US system is it is very class coded, which is something that I find very disadvantageous. It is. I don't think the US is meritocratic, and I don't think meritocracy is reflected in the education system. A benefit of a standardized education system across the country and standardized examinations is that you have the same standard that you're evaluating every single kid in your country, whether they were born rich, whether they were born black, whether they're born white. Everyone is evaluated on the same standard. That cannot be said about the United States. Different states have different education systems.
Yeah.
Private schools, prep schools have different access and more access to more elite universities, to more elite environments, to more elite ways of thinking than public schools and poorer schools. So what does this do? This ends up creating a sort of caste system based on the state you're in, based on the income level of your parents. That to me is very consequential, and I find it really hard to convince a student or a kid born here, born in a state that's not known for education, in a low income family, convincing them the value of education. Because yes, there's importance in being educated, but if a kid born in a state like California, which is known for education, or Boston, has a significantly higher advantage than you, then what's the point? You know? So that to me is the biggest disadvantage of the US system. And I think the consequences of classes across, or even in universities going on to the jobs that you get afterwards, or even university going into grad school, a lot of it is class coded, and I don't think that's good. Yeah. So if I'm going to evaluate Kenya, I think I used to really hate the 844 system. But after I realized that, number one, look at the Kenyans who come to the US. You know, most of them are the top in the country. And it is not dictated by class, you know, which is so valuable in my opinion, because it creates diversity of thought and also diversity of outcome that is class agnostic. Like, yes, there is some influence of class, but it is not as pronounced in the US.
0.1% influence. There's
exactly.
0.1 influence.
Yeah.
Now I had this thought a few days ago, and I called my sister, and she was like, "You're supposed to be thinking about why are you not sleeping?" Because I was like, the Kenyan system. Yeah. Sometimes I may disparage it, but I honestly feel like it works in a way, because when we've interacted with most Africans, I feel like most other Africans apart from Kenyans are from private institutions.
They're from private institutions.
But for us, we're from public institutions, you know. And I got to, maybe our education system is working. Of course, it's not the best, we can do stuff to make it better. Yeah. But given the fact that Columbia students, Ivy League students across all Ivy League schools, Ivy Plus schools, they're from public national schools. Okay, we can say that, okay, maybe, let's say some people are from private schools, some people are from extra county school, but you can say that, okay, they're from majority of them are from public schools, and maybe national schools, that's a whole conversation in itself, because national schools maybe the advantage more than other schools. Okay, cool, I agree that argument, and maybe you should make the system more accessible to other people who have maybe different IQ levels. Okay, but the core of the argument here is that people get into these universities are from public schools. They're not oh, I went to this international Brook House, I didn't go to Cambridge Jams, I'm literally from a public school. I used to wake up at 5 a.m.
Exactly. I used to clean the dishes. I used to clean the dining hall floor. Not me, but I'm saying other people. Not me. I didn't have duties, but
Oh, you didn't have duties?
No, but I went to a private school.
Oh! Because I saw your eyes. You're the people I was talking about.
But yeah, I completely agree. And I think even the simple fact that in KCPE, which is the one from elementary to high school, there's a standardized system where they evaluate you. Yes, you have like a 430, but then they're gonna say, okay, did you go to a private school or a public school? Because that communicates the access of resources that you have. And then afterwards, they're gonna determine like the school that you go to.
Yeah.
So you might end up in a national school as a kid from a public school with lower scores, because determined based on the environment that you are in, that is a really high achievement. And that is something that I really, really give perhaps the Kenyan education system for. Because having a class agnostic education system to me is one of the most revolutionary things you can do at the current time of like capitalism. And if I think about like having an education system where it's only the rich kids who end up having access to the best education systems in Kenya, that's not gonna be good. That's gonna be detrimental to like the development of the nation. And I think that's why even in the US there's such a huge gap between like blue collars and white collars, between like people who are more educated and people who are not educated, because it is the same kind of people who are raised the same kind of way who end up in both sides. You know, it's not a mix.
Yeah, they talked about like the, you know, curve for, say, class is like, it's a bell curve, but it has a long tail.
Yeah.
So that, like, okay, the majority of the people are in that, like, top of the bell. But when you get to, like, those people who earn a lot of money, there's a small number, but it goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And that's, at the end of the tail, you meet Elon Musk, who's, like, earning a lot.
Yeah.
As much as, like, the average people over here. He's over, like, in New Jersey, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his kids, and Jeff Bezos' kids, Bill Gates' kids, they're gonna go to Ivies. Not because they're smarter.
Because they donated a building.
Exactly. And that to me is a problem. That to me is like, okay, fine, maybe they have a space in this, but like, where is Bob, the guy, the kid of blue collars from Alabama? Like,
who like
worked. Like, yeah, who has to work throughout like high school, who probably even around them is a blue collar, and that's the only option, is just becoming a blue collar after high school. You need to reach out to that kid. You need to provide access to that kid for at least, I think, even both political spectrums to even be able to hear each other. Because that kid's ideas, that kid's perspective is not represented anywhere in these elite institutions. And it's because the US system makes it near impossible for such a kid to end up at a top school. And it's not because of their ability. It is because of their parents' wealth.
Okay, now I'm wondering, like, because of this whole aspect of the American dream, which people say is a fallacy, but now when you look at it, I feel like in America it's easier to work hard and, you know, be successful, earn a lot of money as compared to Kenya. If let's not even say, like, if I finish high school in Kenya, let's say this person A, who's like, they will say Mora and Jacob. When Jacob finishes high school and she's like, okay, I want to make money, and this other dude, Brad from America, finishes high school. I feel like Brad, depending on who Brad is as well, we have to like demystify Brad. I mean, who is Brad? You know, is he white? Is he black? There'll be other disadvantages based off of, you know, his race or gender in America. But like, I feel like an American, it will be easier for them, regardless of the class, like if you compare them to a Kenyan, to be successful after high school.
I think it depends on what you really mean by success. And I feel like, can the standard rural, regardless of the race, American who's poor make it? Like, I think, yes, the chances are higher in the US because the opportunities are there, but I think the access to opportunities is so widened. And I think in Kenya it's opposite. Like in Kenya, I feel like, that's a good question. Okay, in my opinion, unless I prove otherwise, I think that in Kenya, I think Kenya is more effed up. That is true in terms of like access to opportunities.
Or like upward mobility.
And upward mobility, But I would say upward mobility is also really hard in the US. But I cannot compare them directly, because what upward mobility means in Kenya is different from the US. Because in the US, it's just so many different levels of upward mobility. Like, yes, you can be making 100K, but like, making 100K where? Are you living paycheck to paycheck? What about the layoffs? You know, what about, do you have a good work-life balance? You're finding like a lot of investment bankers are dying by suicide. Like, is that worth the upper mobility? Like, who actually gets the benefit if you die at 27 from suicide because of how stressful your job is? So there's so many different levels, because there's a 80K, 100K, 200K, 500K, millionaire,
billionaire,
quadrillionaire, billion. Like, there's so many different levels, and it's like maybe it might be easy to make it to the 100K. Is it easy to really make it to the million?
But like 100K is enough. We should, there's whole rhetoric
so.
or like let's not have a lot of, let's not have millionaires and billionaires. Like we're not, like, we don't need them. Like they should give away the money to like the poor people and stuff. So like back to the question again. Like I feel like in Kenya, honestly, because I was thinking like if I'm in the US, it's easier for me. I can work like 2 jobs and stuff. In Kenya, even getting those 2 jobs.
In Kenya, getting the 2 jobs, okay. Which one is better?
Mm-hmm. I feel
you
like
can't
America,
get a job.
I feel like there's more money in America.
You can't get a job. You have to work all your life to survive living.
So which
one is better?
To
me, B is the United States. If you're not upper class, you have to work all your life. Like A? Yes, A is the Kenya one. It's like you might or might not get a job. But kuda ushago, there's shags, you can go farm, you can eat, you can have your babati house, like you can live, yes, you won't live a luxurious life, but you can afford.
But in America,
live. But in the US, you cannot afford to live if you don't have a job.
But hear me out, right? Even if you compare like poverty in Kenya and poverty in America, it's very different.
But there's homeless people here.
Yeah, we also have homeless people in Kenya.
We have homeless people in Kenya, yeah. But it's like, if it's better here, then why are there so many homeless people?
Of course.
Not only that, I feel like homelessness here is more harmful because they have access to like even worse drugs. Not only that, here you're finding even prisoners are being like subjects of like research against their will to the point where they end up dying by suicide because of that. It's like, and you're being paid $15 an hour. Like, would you really say that is better? Like, yes, you're earning an income, but you're gonna die.
Okay, hear me out.
Yeah.
Hear me out. My mom was telling her that Columbia is in Harlem, and she was like, oh my gosh, Harlem, that's the slums. And I'm like, because like, when you think of slums, you think of Kibera, right?
Yeah. Okay, now Kibera. Okay, if I compare Kibera and
so you see the difference? Like, if someone thinks of slums in Kenya, they think of Kibera. And if someone thinks of slums here in the US, they think of Harlem. If I send someone a picture of Harlem who's Kenyan, they'll be like, oh, you're in the US, that's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when you compare it to other places in New York, for example, like 66th Street, it's different. Like the places around the Met, those places look nice.
Yeah.
Then you come here to Harlem, okay, it looks bad, but you can't compare it to Kibera slums.
Okay, so here's my other perspective. Let's look at that kid who's in Kibera. Let's look at that kid who's in like, let's say Brooklyn. I'd say Brooklyn is like deep Brooklyn,
the hood.
Brown Street. That's like the most dangerous street in I think United States. They said United States, but let's say New York.
Okay.
Who is most likely to die earlier?
I'm going to say the kid in Kibera.
I might say the kid in New York.
Okay.
Mine is due to gang violence.
Okay.
Like people shooting and you ending up just being an accidental victim. I would say if the kid in Kibera has at least caring parents, even if they're like really like selling food by the streets, I think that kid has a bigger chance of like, even if not being really rich, but like at least ending up 1 class or 2 classes higher. I don't know if that makes sense. Because the simple fact that there, like there's food like in the public school, I don't know about Ruto, but during the Kibaki times, elementary school was free,
Yeah.
They were, like, the high school was heavily subsidized, and if the parents can afford, there's really good programs, like Equity Leaders programs. There's high schools like Starehe where you can stay over the holidays if home is not safe. So, like, there's a really solid chance of making you past high school, With the kid in Brooklyn, there's the gang violence, there's the intense drug trade that's around them. There's like, yes, they have nicer roads and they have the subway, but at the same time, it's like the situation to me is just as dire, if not more. And I think we as Kenyans can come into this environment and really evaluate that and see the life in that environment, because we have seen worse, but at the same time we don't know what it means to be in that environment. So I feel like we still can't speak accurately about it, because if it was that easy, if it was that possible, then why are they stuck in that loop? You know, why are they still stuck in that loop? Why are they still that entrapped? The answer is because it's not that easy. You know. Yeah.
I got you.
That is my opinion.
Okay, so let's go back to your definition of quality education. What is your definition of quality education?
Meritocratic, class agnostic,
Ooh.
critical thinking, I'd say analytical thinking as well. But what does this mean if there's no opportunities in your country? I would say like that's not education, but I think in the area where the education is, there should be opportunities for like the students to apply the education. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm wondering, what does meritocracy look like?
I would say, if I compare Kenyan education system and the United States education system, I'd say Kenya is more meritocratic. You apply the same standards of evaluation across all students in your country, and you apply that regardless of the class or the kind of school someone went to. That is my opinion. The United States, someone has a 4.0. What does that mean?
I've heard like the 4.0 GPAs.
Like what does that mean? You know, like
there are like some schools that also have like 6.0 GPAs.
Like what does that mean? Like what does that mean? How will I compare a student who has a 4.0 GPA in history and a student who has a 4.0 GPA in physics? Like, who's spent more time studying? Like, how can I evaluate their work? How do I know that the professor is not like a grade inflator? How do I not know that they were taking the easiest classes just to coast by? You know, there's no way to accurately evaluate that at a large scale in the United States.
But now let's go back to the conversation on like breaking down the KCPE versus GPA, right? And you said now like you prefer KCPE.
I prefer KCPE.
Let me be devil's advocate over here.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm gonna say I prefer GPA because remember in KCSE, like you only have one exam.
You only have one, that is true.
Yeah, you only have one exam, and if you flop in that exam, like that's it. Like
that's
if you're not rich, you're going to go to that. Say if you're like this A student who's getting like A's, and then you get a B plus in like your final exam. You're going to probably do another course. I don't know which course, and you're not going to go to med school because that's where like all the A students would want to go, right?
Yeah.
Because of that one exam. And if you don't go to med school, okay, I'm sad. Okay, now I'm starting to make sense. Like you can go to this other place and then you'll still like have a life.
Yeah.
You know, like
but I get
sort of
it.
end
like
to itself.
one exam can,
And it's very stressful again.
Yeah.
You know, like because I have one exam.
Yeah.
I'll be struggling to get that A in that one exam.
Yeah.
But again, now I'm not being a very good devil's advocate because I'm looking at the other side. I'm like, if I get, if it's supposed to be like a 4.0 GPA and I already failed in my first year, I'm like, I'm stressed out because I'm trying to save the rest of the years.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword, I should say.
Yeah. Also, there is a direct link on like lower GPAs with like class. You know, it's like, does that mean they're dumb?
Don't mean they're dumb.
Exactly.
Ain't
It's like
dumb.
it doesn't mean that they're dumb. You know, does it mean that you gonna write the 4.0 GPA or the 3.0 GPA or in the 1.9 GPA? This kid was studying all the time, but the mother works double night shifts. Like she was on taking care of their parents, and they live in a gang-filled area. Versus, oh, I'm a kid who went to a prep school in Boston. Like secluded environment, trees, environment, intellectual thinking, never 4.0 GPA. Like, you know, it's like that is my biggest problem. It's like there's no accurate way of providing same standards to all these students in a way that shows what is actually your aptitude.
Okay, what if GPAs were standardized and you had like the same metric?
I would like that.
So would GPAs be better than KCSE?
I would like that.
What about the kids who are in sub-county schools? Because I feel like for them, it's sort of almost predetermined that, okay, I got this low mark, I got 200 and something in KCPE, then I'm going to this bad high school that's underfunded, it's a day school, and then my outcome for it's predetermined, so I know my outcome for KCSE.
Yeah, I would say now for my opinion, is that speaks to their academic aptitude, and I think it's up to the country to provide opportunities across different academic aptitudes. That is my opinion. Because at the same time, there's still that kid who went to a poor public school in Turkana and got like a 380 and made their way to Alliance. You know,
those are outliers, though.
I don't really think they are. Because if I think about like the students I've met in Colombia, I have met more students within that kind of framework versus like the predictable framework.
Okay.
Which is really interesting.
Okay, interesting.
I have met very few ultra rich kid of politician coming here.
I feel like kids. No, let's talk about like middle class.
Like I'm thinking kid of politician 844.
Let's talk about like the normal Kenyan.
Like who is the normal Kenyan?
The normal Kenyan is like, let's say someone like me. I feel like I'm a normal Kenyan. I'm not like some rich kid over there. I'm just like a normal Kenyan who went to like a public national school because I passed KCPE. Then I went to a public national school.
Did you go to a public elementary school?
Private element.
I think a normal kid went to a public elementary school.
Oh, okay. So
because there's more kids in elementary school than in private schools.
Okay, so like a public.
I think the normal school is public elementary, public high school. By chance they were just applied to equity, and by chance they discovered this is a big shot, and then they got in. That is my opinion of like.
Okay, so you're saying that majority of people come like to Ivy League schools have like those superhero stories, those outlier like, stories.
Yeah. Like if I think about like Columbia students who have met, especially Kenyans, I'd say like 60%. Like if I say 12, I know like 8 who have the other story. I think like me, I'm now on the extreme privilege end, which makes me very uncomfortable. But at the same time, like I realize that like having not just a moonshot chance, but a really solid chance of it happening, I think that's worthwhile. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I think that's really, really worthwhile. Like for example, Kenya won 2020 was a kid from Kibera, and now he's at Princeton. I have not met someone from like Brownsville here in Colombia, you know, like, and I have really, really looked for them, you know. You know, it's like maybe you might meet someone in the Uber, maybe their parents were a nurse, like, you know, you don't meet someone whose parents were like the abject poverty. You don't meet someone whose parents were homeless. You don't meet someone who, you know, here. You probably never will.
Okay. That's a new insight.
You know,
I thought that most people are like myself who are like went to. I didn't even really consider the primary school aspect. I mostly considered the high school aspect, where like most people went to like public schools, like public national schools for the most part, and then like, you know, they worked hard, I guess, and then they got here because they went to like the main argument was like public school, you know, and which is different from like most schools in Africa, where like. If you talk to most people who are in like African schools, and now Wangui in the list, they went to private schools.
Yeah, but I feel like Kenyan is different. Like I know a Rwandan refugee, I know a Somali refugee. You know, like I know like barefoot in Turkana. Like I don't think those are stories that I would have been seeing these common if they were born and raised in the US. You know,
alright.
You know, it's like. Maybe they have a refugee story, but it's their parents who are the refugee. You know, that's the difference. It was not them.
I got you.
Yeah.
All right, so it's easier to maybe get into an Ivy League school if you're from Kenya. That's a very, you know, that's motivating. Honestly.
I think like it is. There's a chance for you to prosper academically across the foundation years.
Yeah.
Which will give you an opportunity to apply to an Ivy League school.
And I feel like that's a wake-up call to like most Kenyans, honestly. If you want to apply to the States, which also feel like I'm conflicted that should I encourage people
like,
to like
I
apply
don't think
to the
you
States?
should. It's not that. It's not all that.
It's
like
not all that.
It's not really all
but
that.
But is it not all that?
I genuinely here's my my opinion. Like, if you really wanna learn how to really help and prosper in your environment, I don't think you need to come. For example, medicine.
But most people should realize that they should not
medicine.
Not everyone should be
to
going to
politics. I would say if you're really interested in politics, being the president of Kenya, you need to stay in Kenya. You need to stay in Kenya.
To have that horror story.
You need to.
Don't come from a dynasty.
Like, you need to build connections throughout your 4 years of university.
Ooh,
you know,
university is important.
You need to like learn how do these people start from MCA, how do they like you're not gonna do that
because like university politics in Kenya, they're real. No, honestly, I wish that was the case here.
It's very different.
It's very different.
Here, how they do it is different.
Yeah.
Here, how they do it is different. There's like secret clubs where like the future potential presidents end up in, and you end up associating with each other. And it's like a very exclusive elite environment that very people have access to.
So it's very exclusive.
It's exactly.
But for Kenya,
you just vie for UN president, come with your story and motivate people, have people stand by, and you can be UN president. You can like have a profile in the public eye.
Okay, that's very interesting because my previous perception was like, here in the US it's easier to succeed, but as you've said, like there's very much exclusiveness,
a lot of nuance,
involved. Like for you, if I'm here in Colombia, honestly, there's a lot of things happening around the campus that I'm not involved in, and people usually talk about, there's a what? Which bubble am I in? Because like there's stuff happening.
There's so many bubbles.
And I'm like, I just don't know what is happening in this school, and the thing is I have my own bubble, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna work on myself and have my own bubble, not to get involved in like other things that see, like as you've said, the whole elite thing. And in Kenya I've now realized that you can actually like do your thing. Okay.
Like I remember meeting, it was like when I was high school and I went to this conference. I remember meeting this lady who was from a poor background, but she was working in UN, and she had like this huge job. And I remember she made me want to work in UN because she was like, I'm making 500 Kenya shillings a month. And this was like in 2018. And like I only have to work like 10 days in office. I'm traveling. I was like, dang. Like, and she was saying how she got involved in it was by being involved in the politics side of UN. Like, that's how she caught the United Nations eye. And I was like, wow.
But Wangui, let me ask you this question now. Question is, I feel like over here in the US, now that we're in Ivy League institutions, our network is very much built, as compared to someone who is in UON. UON is like the top dog of like universities in Kenya, or Strathmore University, I feel like we have a better network over here.
What do you mean by better network?
I feel like I can easily meet people that I want to meet. I can easily reach out to them, or use the network in Colombia and reach out to them, and like they will happily want to meet me, as compared to like happily wanting to meet someone in UON.
I think it depends on the utility of your network. Like, let's say if you aim to end up at like the big companies in a country like here, or end up in the top Ivies or your top universities for a PhD, or like being published in like top journals, then that's possible for you UN, like for an Ivy. But if you want to end up in politics, like you don't need to seduce your professor. You need to seduce your fellow classmate and to like vote for you. That's also a network, and that's also a valuable network. So I think the utility of your network, like what you want to get out of your network, determines what is good for you. If that makes sense. So that's why it's like a really nuanced way. If let's say I've been able to meet with like really powerful people during my time here, like VPs of like top tech companies, etc. And that is not something I would have gotten out of United Nations. And it's useful because I'm really interested in the tech space. But if I was not, like, will it have been that useful? Yeah.
Okay.
So my main argument is that you can create gold out of whatever environment you're in.
Okay. Now let me be the devil's advocate. I'm going to try to be a better devil's advocate this time. I had this podcast with this guy from UPenn. He's called Socrates. And he said that... I told him, like, he said that his level of prospering in UPenn is far much higher than his level of prospering in Kenya. And his major right now is, like, international relations, economics, and Wharton Business School, because it's, like, UPenn. And something else that I don't remember. So the thing, and then I told him, like, I think, like, you can prosper anywhere, like, regardless if he was in UON or, like, any other university in Kenya versus here, like, UPenn, like, he would have prospered anywhere. And it was, like, it's like a wheel going, in a car, and, like, the wheel has a puncture. That's if you were in UON, because, like, okay, yes, I'm a go-getter, I'm all of these things, but even the system in itself, the resources in themselves, they're not as, let me say, robust as the ones here in the US, you know. The name of the institution in itself. Okay, UON is the best school in Kenya.
Yeah.
But Columbia is one of the best schools in the world. UPenn is
yeah.
one of the best schools in the world.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So okay, you can prosper anywhere, but don't you think that you could that's relative, because Columbia, UPenn, the Ivies, Ivy Plus have a better reputation than UON.
Than UON. So as I'm gonna say again, it's like it depends on what you wanna aim for. Like I can say that, let's say you end up working for McKinsey New York,
or JP Morgan,
or McKinsey Nairobi.
Okay.
If your aim is to understand African markets, there's no way that person in McKinsey New York will have more mastery of African markets than McKinsey Nairobi. You know, so that is like the thought framework that I really apply in how I do things, is that your resource, the utility of your resource, is determined by the end goal you want to achieve.
Okay, cool.
You know, so for example, like, I agree, if I was someone from UON wanting to end up working at, I don't know, like a top tech company, it's gonna be harder. But at the same time, it's like, if I'm the person from Nairobi wanting to be president of Kenya, it's gonna be really hard for you to like build your foundation years in the US, come back to Kenya and convince people that you understand Kenya enough for them to vote for you, even if you were born and raised in Kenya. You know, so that is something that is really interesting. Like, if you want to do international relations, if you are more concerned with the global perspective, with how Kenya interacts with the world, then yeah, sure, being in the Ivy will mean more. But if you are interested in diving deep in Kenyan politics, then you're not really going to understand it that much. You will have lost touch, because culture evolves over time, and the years that you have spent away from Kenya, and it's not just any years, it's your formative years that you've spent away, that you're understanding another whole civilization, another whole country, another whole system of politique. That's not just any, but the most elite of the elite. By the time you go back to Kenya to be president, it would have evolved far past, and your thought framework will have changed significantly, that you're not realistically going to catch up.
Even in sense of just like the network thing, like I feel
like,
because politics only starts in like uni.
So it's more of, what is your end goal?
So if you can like break it down now and like summarize, you've said that okay, it doesn't really matter when you want to study. It does matter, but it doesn't matter, because
what matters more is your end goal.
Your end goal. And if you understand like your end goal, it's easier for you to map out where you want to go. Okay. And
to understand what environment is most beneficial for you. So for example, I'm gonna give you like an example of a US school. Say your end goal is ending up at a top tech company. You know, you have Brown University, you have Harvard University, you have Carnegie Mellon University, you have UC Berkeley University. Which one is best for their purpose? Exactly. Berkeley or UC, or Carnegie Mellon. Even though those two other institutions are Ivies, for that specific end goal, this one is, like, these two, UC Berkeley and Carnegie Mellon, are more beneficial for you. So that is like the environment, that is the thought framework that I think you need to apply to really be able to not only decide the environment you wanna be in that will be most beneficial for you, but also advance further and advance so much faster.
Okay, so this whole conversation started with my dilemma of whether I want to should I encourage people to come to the US or should I not encourage people to come to the US. For me, honestly, I feel like if you want to get like that exposure of a different perspective, just like getting off of that default where you don't want, because I feel like if you're in Kenya, you know, you have this like thought process of like how Kenyans think. You're in this like bubble of Kenyans, and you know, like, yes, it's fun being a Kenyan. Like, I mean, being a Kenyan is very cool. I'm not gonna lie, like with the main characters and stuff. Okay, I know, but just like go outside and like learn from other people.
Isn't that the end goal though?
Okay.
If you're like, oh, I'm interested in learning about other perspectives, that's an end goal that you're saying.
But I feel like it's beneficial for people to just like
everyone. It is beneficial, but is it beneficial if you want to treat African diseases? You know, it's
but
like
for you to treat African diseases, don't you need to have a network? As we said, like in the beginning of the episode.
Thing is, like, for you to treat African diseases, you need to train in an African institution.
But you need the resources, because I don't feel like if you study in, say, a Kenyan university, the research aspect will be as robust as the research over here.
I think the simple fact that most researchers are not based in African institutions, I feel like that's why there's such slow advancing in solving regional African diseases.
What about the resources, though?
I think the resources speak a lot, and I feel like that's why even African institutions themselves have not been able to do so. But considering that there is a malaria vaccine which was made in, I think, 2019, 2020, it was made in Maseno University.
Ooh.
How many millions of dollars in all these IVs have been allocated for malaria vaccines? Countless. Why haven't they been able to come up with? Because sometimes you need to be in that region for you to be able to, like, not only see how it is from the ground, but also solve it there.
Yeah.
You know, you cannot understand war unless you're in the midst of it. That's why, in my opinion...
Or like protest.
Exactly.
You can't understand protest unless you're in the midst of the protest. Honestly, like the protest, if... Ongoing, you need to go to the protest.
Which protest? I was there
you were not even in Kenya.
Which one?
No, in Kenya.
I was in the Colombia protest. Like this.
No, but like in Kenya, the
yeah,
anti-finance bill. You're not in Kenya.
I was not in
so
Kenya.
Yeah, like the protest, like you can't understand the protest if you're not just like war.
Yeah.
But now, like we're going like.
So if I speak about resources, like I'm like, if you wanna be a doctor treating Kenyans, just go to a Kenya university. That is my opinion. If you wanna be a researcher who is, I don't know, across all medicine like spectrums, then go do it like in like any school that you can get into that has that resource. But still ground your research on the area you wanna address.
Okay. Now,
like,
this is like part 3 of me being a devil's advocate again.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, because like, you know how, right now med school in Kenya, everyone is like overcrowded.
It is very
Jobs
overcrowded.
are not good. Like people are striking, doctors are not being compensated as to their expectation, as to the hard work that they've put in, So like this is me, say for example, I'm like done with high school. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be the best doctor in the world. My end goal is like treating, African diseases, or not African, like diseases based in the African context. So let's say malaria, for example. And then I'm going to like now study in Kenya to like understand that whole thing. Then as we talked about like in the beginning of the episode, is that like there's a way in which the system works, And if I like decide to work in the Kenyan system, in as much as I want to like treat, say, malaria and find that vaccine for malaria. And let's talk about the vaccine for malaria because it's already been found. Let's talk about like the vaccine for, I don't know,
cholera
cancer
or something.
Okay, cholera. So like I don't think I'll be able to prosper as much because of how the system is set up already. People are crowded. Like med school right now.
But med school it's not crowded in the US, but it's fewer spots that don't address the population.
But can't I like be the pioneer of addressing that problem over here? Because
but it's a government problem though. The government says you can only accept X amount of students, and it has not increased since the 90s. But the population has increased. Doctors are still severely underpaid. Number 3, it's very hard it's the same. It's hard to fund your education in medicine here and also in Kenya.
Med school fees right now are 612K in KU.
And here they're like hundreds of thousands.
No,
it's really hard. It's like the next thing is here in the US, you have to invest 4 years in undergrad, for you to go to med school, So you have to figure out where you're gonna fund your 4 years in undergrad. And
Rhodes Scholarship.
Rhodes is for masters and MD, PhD. It's like, and the scholarships are really hard to come by. It's like that way is like there's so many systemic challenges that it's like, okay, then you go and you do your medicine elsewhere.
Okay.
For you to come back, like for you to, let's say you come to the US, you have to do 4 years undergrad. And then you have to find a med school. Then you have to find residency. And then it depends on how easy it can be for you to come back to the US, but you need to Kenya, but you have to need X years of experiences. And then depending on your specialty, you have to like take an exam or not. And then other times, which is okay, this I think is a good thing, is that I met a dentist who specialized in a very, very specialized, I don't even remember the name, form of dentistry where there are only 7 in Kenya, and they're like, for you to practice here, you also have to teach a course in UN. And I don't think she's being paid to teach a course in UN. So like there's that as well. But she was in Germany, she was trained in Germany, so she spent like 18 years in Germany to be able to come back to Kenya. Yeah. So it's like, it's very, I can't say one is easier than the other, but at the same time, I cannot say that the US is easier, you know? Like each has its own unique set of challenges, and each of those challenges are very challenging.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about this person who's like done with high school. We are talking to you. Yeah. And that kid over there, they're done with high school, they want to come to Columbia or an Ivy League school. What advice would you give them? Like,
assuming they have the grades and they have the program and they're getting in, like surviving in Ivy or applying to an Ivy.
Okay, let's talk about this person who's done with high school. They know which, now it's April right now. So they were done with high school in 2024, December. And now they're thinking of like applying to an Ivy League school once like Common App opens in August. Yeah.
My advice is research on different like top institutions. Really research. Number 2, reach out to Kenyans who are there. Specifically Kenyans, because they've been where you were and they're where they at, so they can relate to you and they can provide advice that is very applicable to you. And then based on talking to different people from different institutions, I will not advise you to like shortlist. I would advise you like all the topics, write all of them. If they're 25, fine. Look for Kenyans in those 25 and talk to all of them, because you don't know how the US system works for you to really understand what is the best environment for you. Yeah, exactly. So afterwards, find Kenyans to talk to, and then and don't be afraid to ask the most controversial questions. Just, they will be really honest most of the time. I am very honest, so I'll be honest. And then afterwards, shortlist based on your personality. So for example, if you realize, no, I'm kind of introverted, I don't want like a huge party school, I just want a small school, that's fine. Like, just know yourself. And then after you've shortlisted your school, ask fellow Kenyans for their application. Ask a lot of Kenyans outside even the schools like that they were like outside of the schools that's in your shortlist. Like, ask them to review essays. I feel like by the time you're done with your case, like the only thing you can change is your essays. So be very vigilant on the essays. As well as the normal advice, I feel like we all go through the same process of like watching so many day in the life videos, reading so many blogs, you know, like college essay guy, like just do that relentlessly. Everyone has to do it. Another advice is find community of other people who are applying as well. Like, that is like, for me, like getting into Columbia was not even my radar until like one of my close friends who currently goes to Harvard told me about it, and they're really interested in coming to Columbia. And I was like, oh, Columbia, okay, let me look into this, you know. So like having friends who you're applying with and like conversing and collaborating with, that also really helps, especially with like the mental health stuff, with like someone talking to like who you can talk to regarding like the stress of the process. Because I go talk to people who are not applying, but how they can't relate, you know. But like someone who's just going through like the essays, writing with it, like there's a bond that forms. Yeah.
Okay, what about someone who's a Kenyan, they don't want to like apply to the US, and they want to go to a Kenyan university?
Number 1 is, okay, so here's a good thing about the US and ending up in an elite institution is that the environment is already curated for people who mostly care about the education or are very high achieving, or are very, regardless of, okay, I'm gonna give credit where it's due. Like, I think in Kenya there's a really negative sentiment towards rich kids as being snobby, as being kind of lazy, as being kind of, you know, spoiled. But here in the US, like the rich kids are like very determined. They're the kind who are gonna wake up at 5, go to lacrosse practice, go do assignments, go to gym, go to class, attend all the classes in the evening, like packed schedules, volunteer on Friday. Like they're really hardworking. So in UON, your environment is not curated to people like that. So the first thing you need to do is find your people, and you need to be very, very careful about your friends, because you can meet friends who don't have any aspirations and you will end up like them. Or you can meet friends who are intense about aspirations, who are intense about like figuring out, succeeding. Those are the people who you need to be friends with. Those are the people who you need to like keep in your circle for you to succeed. Number 2 is know exactly what you want out of the experience and pursue it relentlessly. Number 3, build relationships with your professor. Not like like good bonds, like friendships, like let them be your mentor. Because I feel like with the Kenyan education system is that there are very few people who are actually really serious in these universities. And if you're that kid in your business, like in your econ class, who's doing the assignments, who's talking to the professor like every evening, or not every evening, but like every like end of class, you go and you're talking to them, saying hi to them in a way that is not like suggestive. But at the same time, I understand like being a girl, this might be hard.
Yeah, come to the US conclusion.
But if it's like a female teacher, like I found like female dermatologists, like female dentists who are, even before I joined med school, who are so willing to mentor me just for the simple fact that I asked. So like be that person who asks for mentorship. Don't expect it. People say no, but at the same time, be that person who asks and don't stray. Don't stray. Don't stray. Don't keep the friends. I feel like if you keep intense friends, then you're sorted.
Yeah, and even if you like they don't have friends, like, honestly, watch videos like this type of videos. Like just get those mentors from YouTube or like social media, TikTok. You can get a lot of like people who like inspire people.
Just don't have like the bummers loser friends, because once you have that, like I think. And there are so many. That's the problem with that's the problem with these big universities, that everyone is there. That is the biggest advantage of these elite colleges. That the environment is somewhat like 95% sifted. So at least most of the people around there are gonna be serious about what they're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you've talked about friends. I'm wondering, how has that been?
Yeah, like even though my Equity Leaders program was virtual, I feel like the friendships I formed through it were very, very solid. And I think I'm at this position of privilege where I have friends at almost every big top institution in the world, which is really good. And I have formed solid relationships with them. I've been able to be roommates with some of them, and like we sort of keep in touch, which is good. And I really like that. As for university, Columbia, I have formed friendships. Fortunately, most of them have graduated, but I have formed really close friendships as well. Right now, funny enough, like the new friendships I'm forming are with like more junior students, like juniors, sophomores, freshmen, which I think is really nice as well, because I'm learning, like it's like a sort of a reflection, not on me, but like on my time at the time. Like when I was a junior, I think about myself, how was I as a junior, how am I seeing how they are, like are they okay, are they doing good? So yeah. But these friendships here are very, I don't know how to call it, like boxed in for different roles. I think that's an American thing, where in Kenya, like I think you can have different, like the same friend you study with, the same friend you can go to the club with, it's the same friend who you can bring your mother to, that's not the thing for US. The US is a friends who you study with, do assignments with. Maybe you might form like that special bond and be the all-purpose friends for each other. But most of the time, and then most of the people you will be friends with, they're gonna be very boxed into like a role. It's gonna be that friend who you recruit with. It's gonna be that friend who you go to club with. It's gonna be that friend who you say hi to because you took the same class, and that's it. It's gonna be the same friend who you're in the same floor with, and that's all they like. It's just very boxed into different roles that I think is such a American dynamic kind of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I've also realized that in my short time here in Colombia. Like there's definitely that boxing of friends where, I have to understand that, this is just my friend in class, or like a study group friend, and that's it.
That's it.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and we also want to talk about hair, and you said that you're going to make your hair.
Yeah, this week hopefully.
For your graduation.
We're gonna force it.
So. You said that you didn't like really know the whole thing about hair because like, you had locks, but I'm wondering how your perception of hair has shifted or like has evolved.
Unfortunately, I feel like hair here has become more of a burden, which is really sad. I feel like it's more of the reflective of the dominant culture in the United States. It's mostly white, it's mostly loser hair. So it's like looking for a specialist to look for someone who's gonna deal with your hair the way that you do it. And I think it's even harder as Africans because you're coming into like a new environment. You're from Kenya, where you just need to go walk there and that lady in the kibanda can shuka you and that's it, But here it's like, oh, you have to research. Like I had to research. I spent today 4 hours researching hair bundles, researching which one is this, human hair, braiding hair, researching, ordering, buying, and then there's like so many factors that is very specialized to my experience. I think I have to learn, and I'm learning as I go, and there's no one solid guide. There's no one solid thing where it's gonna be like, oh, if you want braids for this kind of hair, this is where you go, or this is what you buy. You just have to watch a lot of TikTok videos, YouTube videos, and figure it out. So that is that. I've experimented a lot of color. I had dreadlocks, and then I cut off my hair, and then now I have shorter hair, and then I dyed it black, and then I dyed it maroon, and then I dyed it brown, blonde, then I left it. So
your hair is going through a lot.
It's going through a lot. So I think being in university, that's a good thing of coming to the US versus going to Strathmore. I think Strathmore, your hair has to be black or something.
Oh,
I don't know. They have crazy rules, but like in the US, you can color your hair as much as you like. Yeah. I'm still learning. I'm like barely a year old without locks.
Okay. So the last question I usually ask is, what would you do to improve or change the education system?
In Kenya or here?
In Kenya.
In Kenya.
I mean, you can do both, but I want you to focus specifically.
Yeah. I would introduce a lot of philosophy works. Kenya does not teach you critical thinking. In Kenya, if you read a book, I don't know if you guys still read Kigogo or Depal.
No. Like, my year was last year. My year, I
what
think Blossoms of Savannah. I think when I left high school, it was like Fathers of a Nation. I had other books. I don't remember the other books.
Okay.
But they're not reading like any of the books that you read or I read. We're old now. That's all I'm trying to say.
Only thing is that they ask you what are the themes, and then there's the themes of chauvinism, theme of feminism, theme of poverty, theme of education.
Dream
like
motif.
It's so you're not really thinking critically about like the text itself. Like what does it mean? Like the author is saying something. Why are they saying it?
Yeah.
Is it really true? That's the thing. It's like they don't even ask that question. It's like, is it true? What part of it is true? What part of it is false? Like, what can we do to address this? You don't really think about the book as an idea, as an author representing like an idea. And then there's no philosophy books, bombastic side eye. We need philosophy. We need, you know what? I feel like one thing I wish I went through well in high school is I wish I did multi-variable calculus. I wish I did like the highest level, like AP level kind of stuff while I was in high school. Why do I think so? I think we had so much time for us to just be studying those things, like basic level things. Like for example, the simple fact that we don't even study calculus in high school math. It's pre-calculus.
Or pre-calc, integration.
Pre-calc. Yeah, that is pre-calc.
And the problem is, most especially for me as a COVID kid, like we started Form 4 in like May, so we only had like this littlest amount of time to like go through the pre-calc thing, and I didn't even like get the grasp of pre-calc. So now for me, calc, I have to like start from a fresh.
Like, why is rounding up a topic? Something like that should not be a topic. They need to like squeeze writing numbers into words. All those, they need to be squeezed into one subtopic. And then we deal with the rest.
Why is it that in Form 1, honestly? Because I remember in Form 1, like you had to start afresh and learn about integrals. No, it was not integrals. Integers. That's Form 1 work.
Exactly.
That shouldn't be Form 1 work.
Why exactly? It's like it should not be building on the foundations from scratch. Like if it is, then maybe one topic, all of it should be condensed into one topic. But the rest, I think we need more advanced like levels of education that high schoolers are exposed to. practicals need to be practical. Like that is another thing. Like if I was doing science experiments like reals, like I was doing science experiments, but I was only replicating what was on the textbook. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like Kenyan education system doesn't teach you to create new knowledge. Doesn't even create the possibility that you can create new knowledge. That is what practicals are there for. But the teacher doesn't even understand that is the reason why it's there for. So like that is another thing, is that introduce, like there should be, the practical should be centered on this is how you create new knowledge, you know, and this is the significance of it, and you having the freedom of creating on practical. The other thing is philosophy. I said philosophy. Yeah. Practicals. Philosophy is both in English and Kiswahili. Unpopular opinion. People should read philosophy in Kiswahili. Yes. I said what I said.
Kiswahili is a beautiful language.
And I meant what I said. Yeah, it's so beautiful.
It's like, so good. Like, it's just so beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Remember, like, we were talking to Tanzanians and they were just, like, speaking British Kiswahili.
British Kiswahili.
And then we felt like the peasants in those stories where, like, we speak bad Kiswahili and they speak very good Kiswahili. Yeah. It's so good.
They don't even say rada. It was really funny discovering that. So, yeah, Kenya, I would say those are my main aspects. Let me think about... Gosh, geography. I really did not like geography because
Did you do geography until...
I did geography until,
I dropped geography and business studies.
And business.
Those were my mortal enemies.
I did.
Oh, God.
I did business. CRE. Like, I feel like they should really replace CRE with something more philosophical.
Or maybe make it so that, like, people... question what is happening.
Exactly.
I feel like we just, as you said, like we just absorb stuff.
Yeah. Like the exams are more replicating what you've been told, like just copying rather than thinking. And we need to create an education system that you are taught how to think. And express your thoughts. Yeah.
But as we, how we started and, how we commended the Kenyan education system. I feel like, honestly, if you work hard in the Kenyan system, you can honestly be somewhere. You have to, like, work super hard, honestly, because I remember, I don't know how CBC works, and I feel like I should do research on it and just, like, get the grasp on how CBC works in its entirety. But the Kenyan system, it really shapes you to work under pressure. Remember, you used to, like, write in pens, like the essays and stuff. So if you just know how to write with a pen, by the time you get to KCSE, you can't even, like, make an error in your paper because like you've been trained to work in that aspect. So, like, I feel like in a way it helped me so much integrating into this system. Because, like, this is very rigorous in the sense of, like, workload is heavy. You know, so like, that's what I can comment about the Kenyan system. But honestly, if you're in the Kenyan system, just work hard. Just work hard, honestly. And understand, okay, we've talked about now, like, critical thinking. So, like, as you approach, like, the work that you're reading in high school, just approach it in the sense of ask why, and try to understand the concept, honestly.
I don't know if someone happens to read... Because I used to read, like, the old set books when I was in high school. I read... Margaret Ogola.
The River and the Source.
Yes.
Did you read Ngugi wa Thiong'o?
I read The River in Between.
I knew you'd read. I just knew.
I read The River in Between. I was reading a lot of set books. Like, for example, it's like asking, like, why did the author in Reaper the Source kill all the men? It's like, why exactly is it? Like, try to deduce that and have debate with your classmates as
or
to
even
why
talk to your
is
teacher.
that. Or talk to your teacher. Like, this is just going beyond the narrative and just trying to understand the consequences of the plot. Like, why did she choose that explicitly? Because it is an explicit decision. And something like that will help really build your critical thinking. Because that is what the world needs. Because right now, you learn that there's more to the information that is conveyed beyond what is said. There's what is said, subtext. And then there's what is unsaid. And both of them are conveying an information. So critical thinking helps you understand both sides of that aspect.
Honestly, 1000%. As you said, what is said and what is unsaid. Just honestly, if someone is in the Kenyan system, work hard, and maybe as you said from the beginning of the episode, this is like doing homework and like circling everything back. You talked about how like you're a go-getter, that kind of student. Honestly, I'm going to say, don't care about what people think. Just be that go-getter who cares about their dreams, who's going to be that it girl or it guy, you know, for the guys. Yeah, but just be that go-getter student who's like chasing their dreams. Because honestly, as you can see, Wangui here is amazing because she's a go-getter, you know? Like, if you want to be amazing, if you want to be this prolific person, okay, we've talked about how the Kenyan system, employment rate is bad and stuff, but if you're that go-getter, you're going to be the person who's going to be hired, you know?
Yeah,
because like you have to be the person who's thinking outside the box.
Yeah. And we're seeing like a lot more global companies coming to Kenya and like setting up shop in Kenya. Not only that, but creating like internship opportunities, research opportunities. You know, that means that more opportunities are opening up. And if you're not that go-getter, who's gonna look? Because your professor, you know, your classmate who in Klabu is not gonna come in. You know, like you gotta be the guy who, the person who has that network around them, who's gonna be like, they're gonna tell you, but also everyone is on the lookout for more and more opportunities, and you're telling each other. That is so important.
And you should make sure, like, by the time those people find you, you should have already built, you've built the work, you've done your homework, you've done your foundation, you know, like just do the homework. By the time they get to you, they'll be like, okay, I'm offering you this chance in like this internship in Google, for example, you know, like you should have the credential to show that I'm worthy of this position, not trying now to scamper and you're trying to like figure it out again, you know.
Like I remember during December, I met like Kenyans doing big things. I met this Strath. He didn't even think he was done with his first year of his degree, but he was doing coding projects for American clients. You know, he bought an apartment using the money that he earned through those online jobs, and it's like that is a go-getter. You know, it's like there's like you just have to create opportunity. Like just because you're in Kenya doesn't mean you're lost.
Ooh, that's going to be the title of the video.
Like no, and just because someone is abroad doesn't mean they made it. You know, like they're like making it is. What is your goal? Did you achieve it? That is what making it means. Yeah. It's not about, this person took photos in IG on Maldives. No, you don't know what they're going through behind the scenes, you know. So you need to be very, very clear about what your goal is. You need to learn how to define goals. You need to know what you want out of your life. And if you don't know how you want in your life, Google people who you admire. Read their Wikipedia pages and be like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to be like this? Do I want to be in this environment? And if it's a yes, then save it and then read it every month or something. Like that's what I do with people I admire, and I think I know their lives like the back of my hands, you know. But that's how you can create like pseudo mentors, even though like I aspire to people like Timnit, who's a researcher, Timnit Greybrew, who's a researcher, top AI researcher in the field of computer science right now. Will I ever be able to talk to her? I don't know. Is she gonna respond to my emails right now? Probably not. But the simple fact that I can Google her on Wikipedia and see her profile and see how she got to where she is right now gives me some sort of a map. That if I follow, hopefully, or if I push myself to get to that level, then I might end up being in her level or a level higher. This is not this is not a resource people who are successful now had access to at their time. You know, but now you have access to that. You can have global mentors from anywhere just by memorizing their life stories and aspiring towards that.
And now going back to even uni, if you're in Kenya, for example, you talked about how like people are building their networks. If you want to be a politician, for example, you start with building your network like at the uni level, and even in like schools like say law school, you know, if you go to law school and you want to be a prolific lawyer, you're not. I feel like the main takeaway that I'm going with this point, where am I going with this point, is the fact that don't just go to uni. Most especially uni. Let's even leave high school behind. Like, don't go to uni and just like read and say, okay, I'm reading to succeed. I get a first class honors or a second upper, then like I go. Girl, boy, you ain't gonna be going so far if you're just like having your credentials, like your books, you know, your grades, you know. You have to go to uni with that mindset of, okay. And the good thing about Kenya is when you go to uni, like, you know, you're going to law school, for example, like med school. So if I go to law school right now, I'm going to read, but I'm also going to join those moot competitions. I'm going to try to like work in like the UN through Model UN. People like succeed through Model UN alone, you know. It's all about like someone pushing themselves to those like connections through like clubs.
Attending events, looking for your people, look at the year above you if you're in KSL. Who's the second year? Who's the top performing second year? Try and talk to them. Try and see how they got there. Try and see how they do it, and then replicate what is replicable in your life. And that's literally it. Yeah. It's not easy.
It's not.
But being a failure is also hard. Like you choose your what?
Being a failure is easy.
I think the state of failure is hard.
Ooh,
if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's like the same way they're saying like being rich is hard. Because for you to be rich, you have to have a lot of responsibility. Like, I'm sorry, but like Bill Gates is not spending his life. Okay, Bill Gates is about to die, but like I'm sorry, but like let's say Bill Gates in his 30s, he was a billionaire, but he was stressed out because he was leading Microsoft. He was stressed out, like breaking into new markets, managing hundreds of thousands of people. That's a hard life.
Yeah.
But being poor is also hard. You have to choose your hard. Like you really have to choose the hard life that you want to live. It's like, let me say, like establishing like a good network or a good friendship circle in a university. It's hard, you're gonna have to reach out to people. You're gonna see what fits. You're gonna learn how to, like, social cues, how to be more social. It's gonna be hard, but settling for any environment, like, it's also gonna have difficult consequences.
You have to settle for less. And every single time you have to get up and be like, oh my god,
I'm meeting this
bare minimum friends.
It's like, it's also hard because you'll be thinking, oh, everyone who surrounds me is fake. It's still a hard life, so you always have to choose your life. Like in life, one thing that's consistent, and this is from like Buddha, is suffering. You just have to choose which is the suffering you'd rather be in. People say, oh, kulia kwenye Range Rover, kucheka kwa boda boda. Utalia kwa Range Rover, utalia kwa boda boda. Choose where you wanna cry. It's like, for example, people think that once you come to the abroad, like, your problems are solved. No, it's like the cost load here is higher, more competitive, standards are higher, racism, try getting a job. It's still hard, but you choose your heart. That is it. Don't think there's an easy way out. Get it out of your mind. Just already know that for me to achieve what I want to achieve, it is going to be a difficult process, but I'm still going to stick to it. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Wangui, thank you for being the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right.